For the next motif in the Debbie Bliss Winter Blanket Knit Along, we're going to work Fairisle. The Fairisle technique is where we carry the yarn along behind us, behind the work. It's a really fun technique to learn. You can apply it to all kinds of different things later on. And it uses a chart like the others, and it's really easy to follow. So join with me and learn how to work the Fairisle technique for our little snowflake. So here we go. This is our lovely snowflake square, and the snowflake is worked in a technique we call Fairisle. Fairisle is a beautiful way of introducing colour to motifs in your work that are spread across an image. So we do this by carrying the yarn at the back of the work along the back like this, and so this is what it'll look like. We have one strand, because we've just got one strand of colour in this, that we're carrying backwards and forwards and switching over to do stitches of different colours. So as usual, we have the garter stitch border that goes around the sides and the garter ridge at the bottom. So I have worked 4 rows of garter stitch, and then the first 4 rows of this chart are in stockinette or stocking stitch. So remembering that the right side rows begin on the right side, right to left, and the wrong side rows work from left to right. So you know which row you're on because the number will be sitting on the side that you need to start. So we have 3 rows of garter stitch, and then the chart begins. So on this particular arm, row 1, there were 3 stitches of garter stitch here, and then knit across, 3 stitches of garter stitch, and then on row 2, 3 stitches of garter stitch, knit stitch, and then purling all the way across with 3 stitches of garter stitch at the other end. And that sets the pattern for the stockinette or stocking stitch that sits behind the colour work. So I've worked up the first 4 rows of the chart, and we're ready to start on row 5. Now row 5 is a right side row. We know that because the 5 is on the right hand side and we're looking at the right side of the work. So we're going to work the 3 stitches of garter, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches of knit, and then we're going to change colour for the contrast yarn, which in my case here is white. I'm using the Spruce Up colourway, which is this beautiful mallard and white. So I've got my white yarn at the ready, and I'm going to begin by 3 stitches for the border, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 before we change colour. So I'm going to work 5 knit stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we're going to introduce the contrast colour. So I'm going to leave quite a nice long tail for sewing in, grab a loop, and then I'm going to put my needle into the next stitch and then pop the loop over and knit it. And now you have attached the white yarn, the teal, and the 2 ends. Now it's important when you're working in Fairisle, if you've got 2 colours like this, to decide which one's going to go at the top and which one's going to go at the bottom. And that means that it never tangles too badly at the ball end. So it's not crucial, but it's important in this case. So for example, here we just have 1 stitch of teal, and then I'm going to work 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 back in the teal. I'm going to take the teal yarn and have it sitting at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, that one's twisted. Let me turn that round. 6, 7. And then the white yarn, which is my contrast, I've got it sitting underneath. It's sitting at the bottom, underneath this teal one. So I'm just going to grab that white yarn and bring it up underneath, knitting a stitch there. So we've got the 2 of them there, and then I'm going to pick up the teal again to work 5 to the last 3 stitches, which we know are the garter stitch border. And there's those last 3 to work. 1, 2, 3. Now, when you're working Fairisle, it's really important to keep the work stretched out. If you pull these contrast colours and your floats too hard and too tight, there's the float at the back, the image on the front will pucker. So it's very important not to pull your yarn too tightly. Okay, let's work row 6. Okay, so here we are at the wrong side of the work on the back of the work. There is your float, that's what we call that, across the back with your white yarn. And row 6, because it's a wrong side row, is coming from left to right. And the number's over there, so we know it's going from left to right. So we begin with 3 stitches of garter stitch, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 purl stitches before we change colour. So let's do that. Make sure you keep your yarns nice and fluid and not tight. So I'm going to work 1, 2, 3 stitches of the garter stitch, and then bring the yarn to the front of the work to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 purl stitches. That brings us up to this point where we're going to change colour, and I'm going to grab the white yarn, and can you see actually there it's underneath, so I'm going to bring that, whoopsie, work a stitch, and then I'm going to pick up the teal again and work the 7 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 across to the other. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I'm going to bring the white yarn to purl this stitch here, purl there. Now sometimes if it gets a little bit baggy like that, just gently tug the floats to make sure that they don't go too baggy. But as I say, don't pull them too tightly. Pick up the teal, and then we've got to purl back to the last 3 stitches. Take your yarn to the back of the work, and 1, 2, 3 knit for that lovely garter stitch border. Stretch out nicely, and there you can see the 2 floats sitting nicely. Right, let's have a look at row 7. Row 7 is a right side row, and you can see where we have these 2 little white squares appearing in the fabric of your swatch. This time we're going to do our 3 stitches of garter stitch for the ridge, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches in teal before we change onto the white. So 1, 2, 3 for the border, and then 4 stitches in teal, 1, 2, 3, 4, and now we're going to work 2 stitches in the contrast colour, which is white. So I'm just going to grab the white yarn, work 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then pick up the teal, and we're going to work 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We're going to then pick up the white again. Oopsie, make sure you pick up the one that's attached to the ball and not the tail. knit 1, pick up the teal again, and we have 1, 2, 3. And then our 2 stitches again over here in the white. So I'm picking up the white, 1, 2, and then we work 4 back to the garter stitch border in teal. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have 3 stitches left for the border. Keeping it nice and stretched out. Okay, let's work row 8. Let's just have a look at the back of the work there. You can see how the floats are working. Nice and relaxed, not too tight. So now, row 8, we're working on a wrong side row. The 8 is on the left hand side, so we're working left to right. So we have 3 stitches of garter stitch and then 2 teal, and then we're going to switch to the white yarn. So making sure you've got lots of yarn available to you. 3 stitches of garter stitch, which is our border. And then I'm going to bring the yarn to the front to work these. So we're going to work 2 stitches in the teal, 2 pearls, 1, 2. And then I'm going to grab the contrast yarn, the white yarn, and we're going to work 1, 2, 3, 4 pearls in the white yarn. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we've got 2 in teal. So I pick up the teal yarn and we're going to work 2 stitches. 1, 2. Then we have 3 in white. So I'm going to pick up the white yarn, which is sort of running underneath here. 1, 2, 3. Keeping it nice and stretched out. 2 in teal. So I grab the teal, work 2 stitches. 1, 2. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 in white. Grab the white. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 2 teal stitches and then our 3 stitch border. So I'm going to grab the teal, going to work 2 teal pearls. Whoopsie. Before just bringing the teal around to the front, around to the back and knitting 1, 2, 3 stitches for the border. That is row 8. Let's have a look at row 9. Row 9 is a right side row. We know that because the 9 is on the right hand side, so we're going to be going from right to left. And you can see it's really gorgeous the way that this image is appearing. So we're now going to work 3 stitches for the garter stitch border and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in teal before we change to white. So making sure that your yarns aren't twisted, you've got nice freedom with enough yarn unravelled, and off we go. 1, 2, 3 for the garter stitch border, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in teal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we are. And the first now we've come to this little white stitch here. So I'm going to grab the yarn from behind. Remember, look, that's right sitting underneath the teal there, which is great. I'm going to knit one stitch there of the teal, of the white, and then we switch to one stitch of teal. So I'm going to pick up my teal yarn, there, and then we have 3 contrast stitches in white. So I'm going to pick up the white yarn from underneath there. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Pick up the teal for 1 there. And then we've got 1 contrast here, just 1 stitch of white. And the rest of that row is teal and then the garter stitch border. So I'll just pick up the teal again and knit to the end. When you're working on a knit row, of course the garter stitch border is still just knit, so you're pretty much knitting to the end of the row when you're on the right side. There we go. Now if I just stretch that out nicely, you can see that appearing really beautifully. Let's switch over and do row 10. So row 10 is a wrong side row, and we're going to work across from the right to the left, remembering that the 10 is on the left hand side, so that's how we know that. So we begin, make sure your yarns aren't tangled, make sure your swatch is nicely spaced out so that you're not pulling it tightly. We work 3 stitches of garter stitch, 1, 2, 3, and then bring your yarn to the front because we're going to purl across for row 10 on the wrong side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 purl stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we have a contrast stitch of white, teal, white, teal, white. So I'm going to pick up the white yarn. So I'm going to stitch 1 purl, then pick up the teal, 1 teal, pick up the white, pick up the teal, then pick up the white, and then once you've got your 3 white stitches there, teal all the way back to the last 3 stitches. Nice and stretched out. When you reach the last 3 stitches, yarn around to the back and knit that garter stitch border. Let's have a look. So this is the way that the Fairisle emerges through your work. The 2 real sort of top tips, I would say, make sure you keep your work stretched out all the time. Keep checking it to make sure that it's not too tight and it's just nice and stretched out. And then you find that the image doesn't pucker along the front. And the other thing is make sure you keep these 2 yarns not tangled. And the best way of doing that is making sure one's at the top and one's at the bottom. When you've finished working the chart, you've got several rows here of stockinette or stocking stitch with the 3 stitch garter border either side, and when you get to the top of the chart, we finish off with 4 rows of garter stitch to make that lovely garter border. And so that is how we work Fairisle. So that's your snowflake. Now we've got the next one to do, which will be even more fun.